A very pleasant morning to everyone. Hope I am clearly audible. Okay, we'll begin the event now. And I'm really happy that a lot of you have turned up to the event, Industrializing Additive Manufacturing. We have already had a lot of previous events and hope all of you have found that fruitful. And in this event, it is going to be totally different. We are not just going to learn how additive manufacturing works or how the Cura software works. We are going to learn something more about its application, how industries are using it, how it is being advantageous to them. So the title aptly says what we are going to discuss in the event, Industrializing Additive Manufacturing. And yeah, so I feel really happy and proud to welcome Mr. Saumyaji. He is the Saumyajyoti. He is the co-founder of the medtech company called Punar Rehabilitation Solutions, and they extensively use additive manufacturing for rapid prototyping and manufacturing of final products. And to add more specialty to that, he is an alumni of VIT and he has over 6 years of experience working with the 3D printers. So I hope this session is going to be really informative and we are going to learn a lot from Mr. Saumyajyoti. We welcome you to the event, sir. We are looking forward to learn a lot from you.
Thank you, Madhumita, for introducing me. Good morning, everyone. I hope I am audible. So before I start this session, I would like to just share my screen. Take a moment.
Sure, sir.
All right. So while I was making and preparing for today's session, so what I kept in mind was that you all are beginners or have just started with this 3D printing. So that will be my assumption throughout the session. And you guys will probably now or in your classes would learn about how 3D printing works, about the materials and all those things. What my session is going to be about is how you can use those in your own projects and how effectively and cost efficiently you can optimize which processes to use and where. So just to start this session, I will just introduce additive manufacturing. So as you guys already know that in additive manufacturing, we manufacture any object or component layer by layer by depositing material. In contrast to other manufacturing processes such as machining, which is a subtractive manufacturing process, you start with a billet, you take out material to finally reach the shape that you want, or you have forging, which is a shaping process. You heat up piece of metal and you hammer it till you reach the shape which you desire. So in additive manufacturing, so let's say I have this cup and I want to manufacture it. So what additive manufacturing is that will divide the whole object into multiple layers. So for example, let's say in this particular example, I have divided into almost 10 layers. Now, if I deposit material enough so that I can produce one layer, when you add it up, you will get the whole object. So I will just open my Cura and show you guys something. So right now, I have kept the layer thickness at around 5 millimeter, which is pretty large considering 3D printing. So you can see how big stair step effect you can see. The curve part, which is the handle part of the cup, is not coming really well. Now, if I start decreasing it, let's say around 1 millimeter, you can see that slowly the stair step effect will start reducing. So the smaller layer you go, the better prints you will get. That is one, basically you can say, key rule. Next, I would like to introduce types of additive manufacturing. I think you guys already know about FDM because most of the printer that you see around you in university and companies using, most of them are fused deposition modeling, or the open source version, which is fused filament fabrication. Apart from that, there are multiple other types of 3D printing process. What I will cover in this session is most common one, and I am not going to cover metal 3D printing. I am only going to cover polymer 3D printing. So in polymer 3D printing, apart from FDM, we have VAT polymerization, which is basically SLA or DLP. SLA stands for stereolithography and In SLA or DLP, what we essentially have is a tub of photopolymer, and we have a UV light source or a digital screen which will cure the material according to the part which you need. Then we have powder-based manufacturing technologies such as SLS or MJF. MJF was introduced by HP in 2016, just few years back. SLS, we are using SLS from almost around 1990 now. Apart from that, we have material jetting technology such as polyjet or binder jetting, which are really advanced level of additive manufacturing for making very real life parts, especially polyjet. So that's all about types of 3D printing. Now we'll go to each one of them. We'll see what all material choices we have and how we can use those actually. So as I already told that in today's session, I will cover FDM, FFF, SLA, DLP, SLS and polyjet mostly. We are not going to go through metal powder or metal sintering. Before I proceed, so what do you guys think? Is additive manufacturing a recent technology, or are people using it from a very long time? You can actually turn on your mic and answer, or just post the answer in comment in message section.
Hello. So I believe the technology is been for a very long time, but recently it's got into the trend, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Your name is Abhishek, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Abhishek, why do you think suddenly we started hearing a lot about this technology? I would say probably in last 5, 6, 10 years. What happened? What changed?
So the technology is more accessible to more people.
Okay. Abhishek is actually correct. So what happened was 3D printing was initially developed in 1980s and 1990s, but it was controlled by two very big companies, Stratasys and 3D Systems. After 2010, the patents expired and patent came into public domain. So a lot of people started building onto those patents, and we had this open source revolution called RepRap. And as a result of it, we now all have access to 3D printers instead of just bigger institutions or companies. Even we can afford a 3D printer now. Okay, moving on. Share my screen again. So as I told, 3D printing was first introduced in 1980 by Chuck Hall, and it was a stereolithography printer, pretty similar to the SLA printer that we have today. And the company that was built around that 3D printer is called 3D Systems. They are a leader in additive manufacturing today, and most of the SLA 3D printers are actually today also manufactured by 3D Systems itself. So let's start with the first type of 3D printing, which is fused deposition modeling or fused filament fabrication. I hope that most of you guys have already seen it, or at least know about it, because it is very common. Most of you would have seen a 3D printer such as this, which is a hobby grade open source 3D printer costing around $1,000, and even the cheaper one costing around $200 or something. If you move a little ahead in the curve, you will have companies such as MakerBot creating semi-industrial machines. So this is also a desktop 3D printer, but a lot of this printer is actually built upon patents from Stratasys. So this will cost you around $2,000 to $3,000. So this is mostly for usage in schools, universities, where you don't want to have a lot of downtime. And then we have the proper industrial machines such as Stratasys Fortus, and Stratasys also control the material that they use. There are very specific material you can use with Stratasys printer. So in FDM actually we have a huge variety of material that we can use, such as PLA, TPU, ABS, PETG. PLA stands for polylactic acid. It is a very good prototyping material. So I have a PLA sample over here, if you can see. PLA is a very good material if you are looking for very fast prototyping. EPU stands for polyurethane, and it is a flexible material that you can use. Generally for FDM 3D printers we have 95 show hardness EPU. ABS is also a rigid material. I don't have a part made out of ABS, but if you want to print ABS in a open source printer, it is generally a little difficult because they are not enclosed. If you want to print ABS, you have to enclose and you have to maintain a consistent temperature. To solve that problem, we have PETG material, which is basically polyethylene tetrapethylate glycol, the same material with which your Bisleri bottles are made, with a glycol addition so that it is easily 3D printable. So what I have here is a PETG printed part. You can see the natural color of PETG is transparent, so this part is sanded, so you can see a kind of translucent finish. Apart from that, we have nylon, we have ASA, we have high temperature materials such as PEEK. So PEEK will melt around at 450 to 500 degrees Celsius. You can even make engine part out of PEEK. And apart from that, we have fiber reinforced material. So if I mix carbon fiber or glass fiber with any flux such as PETG, so we'll have reinforced carbon fiber PETG. If you want to manufacture any object with higher tensile strength, then you can go with fiber reinforced material. If you see a standard FDM or FFF printer, you will have a feeder or an extrusion system which will basically push the filament into the printer. You will have a print head and you will have a hot end inside the print head. I have a hot end lying around here, I can show you this. So I am holding a hot end in my hand. This hot end is actually housed inside this print head, which you can see. It has a heat block, it has a nozzle, it has a heat break, and you can see this blue color Bowden tube. So that Bowden tube would come from the extrusion system and into the hot end. The filament will flow from the extruder. There is a stepper motor over here which pushes the filament inside through the Bowden tube, and basically we will heat this heat block using a heater rod, and the temperature of the nozzle will rise. When the filament comes in contact with the nozzle, it will melt and become a semi-solid material, and then we can basically lay it over. So I already show you that part, right? After you are done with FDM 3D printing, since you will have a lot of layer heights and the finish that comes out of the printer is not really good, you have to go for a thorough post processing if you want to make a real life prototype or something which looks close to an injection molded part. So as you can see in the screen, so this part was actually printed with PETG. You can see the picture. After that, we did a coarse sanding with 200 grit sandpaper and 320 grit sandpaper. After that, we have to go for a primer coating over it, so to hide all the layer lines. Then we can go for a wet sanding. After wet sanding, you will get a pretty smooth finish on your part. Then you can go for painting. So after you paint, even with FDM, you can get parts of this quality. Moving ahead. So basically, if I talk about a thumb rule, if you have a part and you are thinking like if I should use FDM for this particular project or not. So basically, if you are producing a rough and tough prototype for checking the form factor or testing some mechanism, FDM will work pretty great. There are some limitations that you cannot print really small parts with FDM because the nozzle diameter is almost 400 micron, and if you try to print a really small material, you will have kind of a lump forming because the temperature is really high and the cooling won't work that fast. So for bigger parts, FDM works pretty well. Obviously, FDM will have some kind of layer lines or blobs which has to be removed and has to be thoroughly post-processed. You guys can also opt for sandblasting. After sandblasting, you just have to do a little bit of sanding. If sandblasting is not there, just then more time will be invested in sanding. If I talk about the dimensional accuracy and all, FDM will generally have a dimensional accuracy of plus minus 0.2 millimeters or 200 microns. So you cannot really print something which requires very intricate details, such as a ratchet mechanism or very small gears. Those things you cannot print with FDM because the teeth won't come out really well. Okay. Moving on, we have VAT photopolymerization. So VAT literally translates into tub. In VAT photopolymerization, we basically use a resin which cures when exposed to a particular wavelength of ultraviolet light. Generally, the wavelength lies between 400 to 500 nanometers. In this segment also you have three types of printers. So you have hobby grade printers, which will cost you around 25 to 30,000. Then you have companies such as Formslab bringing in Form 3, which is a desktop SLA printer, and this will cost you in somewhat in the range of 3.5 lakhs in India. And if you go full industrial scale, then you have 3D System making Project 6000, and a machine such as Project will cost you somewhere around 50-60 lakhs. The difference in all these three machines will be obviously surface quality, then time taken to print the object, then what kind of resin you can use. All those things will be different. Obviously the industrial ones are much more accurate than the semi-industrial ones or the hobby grade ones. In VAT photopolymerization, we generally have two types of printers. One is stereolithography printer and we have a DLP printer. The full form is digital light processing. So the hobby grade printer that you generally get into the market, they are DLP printer or digital light processing. The expensive printer which you get, such as the industrial or semi-industrial one, they are stereolithography printer. While they use almost the same resin, the difference is the way they cure the part. So in stereolithography printer, after you have sliced, so you basically get one image. That image is actually cured by a beam of laser selectively, like you can see in this image. In DLP printer, to make the printers cheap, you actually have a LCD screen which actually projects light into the tub. So there is a screen over here and there is a projection system that will project light into the tub. So in DLP, basically one layer is cured at a time. In SLA, the layers will be cured like selectively, not one at a time. SLA, the resins won't be exactly the plastic that we have in our daily life, such as ABS or PETG or anything. So what we do with SLA or DLP, we create resins which mimic properties of the actual plastic. So generally we have a standard resin which will mimic the property of a ABS part. We have a clear resin. Then for higher strength application, you can go for a tough resin. For other very specific medical application, there are dental resin. And if you want to print a flexible part, you can go with a rubber like resin. But remember, when you use a rubber like resin in SLA setup, the part that comes out is a little bit brittle. So if you apply a lot of force into a part which is made out of rubber like resin in SLA machines especially, the part will break. So for that you need to go with other processes if you want to print very high quality elastomers. So this is a product that I have been working on, and all the parts that you can see is marked with green arrows are actually printed out of SLA. We have used a 3D system machine called Project, and the machine and the material used was standard resin, which basically is kind of ABS. And after printing, we have post-processed it. So in FDM, when you post-process, you have to invest a lot of time because the part that comes out of the printer is not as good. There are a lot of layer lines, there are a lot of blobs, stringings and all. But when a part comes out of SLA machine, only you need to remove the supports. And that too is very easy to remove. There won't be any stringing, there won't be any unnecessary block formation. Layer lines are also very barely visible. So I have some SLA parts over here for you guys to see. So this part was printed and directly painted without any additional need for sanding, primer coating or anything. A little bit sanding with 1000 or 2000 grit and you can get this kind of quality out. So if you are making a part which is cosmetic in nature, which has to be in in the hand of customer, or you it should be visually pleasing, so then you can go with SLA. So basically, again, for thumb rule, if you want to decide whether to use SLA in a particular project or a particular application or not, so SLA will produce very fine details. So if your project is a electronic enclosure and you want to pitch to an investor or pitch to a customer and it needs to look really good, then SLA is the best solution. And if you want to print a small part, which almost mimics the injection molded part, a desktop SLM machine is perfect, such as a Forms Lab. But since we use a resin-based technology over here, it is very cost intensive. So if a part in powder-based or FDM would cost you around 1000 rupees, in SLA it would cost you around 6 to 7000 rupees, almost 7x to 10x. So you have to very cautiously use which technology you are going to opt for. Also, the parts which come out of SLA using standard resin are not very strong. So if you apply a lot of force over it, it will break. But on the other hand, SLA is very good at producing thin-walled parts. So if you want a part which is almost 1 mm or 0.8 mm in thickness, you can easily make it with SLA. If you try to make it with FDM, it will eventually break out because of the stair-step effect. If you print it like this, you will have a lot of stair-step effect on the curve. It will break. But in SLA, it will come out very nice, very thin-walled parts. I hope that you can see the part at least. Moving on, the next process that is very commonly used and we use over here is laser sintering. There are two most common types of laser sintering available, that is selective laser sintering SLS or multi-jet fusion, which as I told, HP introduced back in 2016. Both of these processes are almost similar. MJF just has one extra step in the print flow. So in the diagram over here, you can see how SLS process generally work. So in SLS, in place of filament or a liquid resin, we use powdered material, so which is basically nylon. So you can see this white powder, which is basically powdered nylon, and then you have a system which basically spreads a very thin layer, which becomes your layer height, into a bed, and overhead lasers will cure it selectively. Wherever the part is there, it will cure, other part it will leave. So after the print is done, you can remove the part, vacuum the remaining powder and reuse the powder. Since there is a lot of reusability, SLS is comparatively cheaper technology than SL. Here is a finished part. So after you take out the part, you can air blast it to remove all the residual powder. Then you will get this final part. For post processing, since SLS or MJF, both of this technology use nylon as their base material, it is very easy to dye them. So if you have a part like this, and if you want this part to be in blue color, you can just use a few drop of blue color dye, the same thing which is used for a fabric, and a hot water bath. This part will slowly absorb that color and you will have the part in blue. Talking about strength or functional application of SLS or MJF, SLS or MJF are very strong, and you can very easily use this for functional application where there is a lot of strength and flexibility required. So just for example, if you are making a robot and you want to make a suspension system, or if you are making a robotic arm and you want to 3D print a gripper for that, MJF or SLS is a perfect solution for that. The only difference between SLS and MJF is that SLS it will deposit the powder and then it will cure using laser. In MJF you have two additional steps in which it will first apply a detailing agent and a fusing agent. So the fusing agent will be applied in the internal side of the part and detailing agent will be applied on the outside of the part. So if this is your part and this is the print head, the detailing agent will be applied only on the sides and the fusing agent will be applied on the center part of it, and then it will energize using lasers. So what will happen is you will have a very good dimensional accuracy because of the detailing agent. If you apply fusing agent on the boundary as well, the powder will fuse too much and you will have some shrinkage, which you generally see in SLS. But in MJF the part accuracy is much more than SLS. It's not a lot different, but still MJF is a little better than SLS. And so in the cost, so if a part would cost you around 2000 to make in SLS, it will cost you around 2500 in MJF. By the way, this is the MJF part and this is dyed in black color. After it is printed, it went for sandblasting, so to smoothen the surface a little bit, and then we can dye it in, we have dyed it in black color. So more parts over here. So these are basically linkages of an exoskeleton we are developing. Since we use actuator which gives out around 40 to 50 Newton force, the parts needs to be very strong. So we have opted for MJF. You can see in the picture, this is one more part that we use over here, and specifically this is a spring. So this flap inside has to be flexible. I don't know if you can see it in the video or not. You can see if I press, it will easily go and it will come back to its original position. So basically what I'm trying to say is that if you MJF or SLS a part, the outcome will be a little bit flexible. It won't be brittle like what you get from SLA or what you get from FDM. If I press it, it will press. So if you are making a suspension system or anything which has continuous varying loads, then this is the best method to opt for. You can do SLS or you can do MJF. So if you ask me how small parts can we print with MJF or SLS both, so this is the scale. So this is a standard Bisleri bottle cap and this is the smallest part that I have printed till now. This is almost 3 millimeters in diameter and hardly 4 millimeters in total length. Like this. So this is a whole bunch. I can actually take one out. So if you take one out over here, I don't know if you can see that part, like this. This is the smallest scale that you can go. There are most commonly two types of material when it comes to SLS or MJF. One is PA11 or polyamide 11, which is basically a little more flexible, and then you have a little rigid part which is polyamide 12. Both are nylon based engineering material. Apart from that, you have a few more material coming into MJF, such as HP has even developed a TPU material for MJF. It has not reached India yet, but I think in few years it will. So again, for a thumb rule, both MJF and SLS are very good for creating functional prototypes. If you are designing a cycle and you want to create a seat for that, you can go for MJF or SLS. The dimensional accuracy is much better than that of FDM. Obviously not as good as SLS, so SLA. So SLS dimensional accuracy will lie between FDM printers and SLA printers. Very high strength and relatively flexible. MJF has slightly better accuracy than SLS because of the binder agent that we put inside. By binder I mean the fusing agent and the detailing agent. The cost of MJF is around 4.5 to 5 times less than that of SLA. So for example, if this part would cost me around 5,000 in SLS, it would cost me around 900 to 1,000 rupees in SLS or MJF. So accordingly, you can see, just because of the powder reusability, the cost has come down. The next type of 3D printing technology that we use in our product is PolyJet. So till now the technology that we were seeing were mostly for making prototypes. PolyJet basically brought in so that we can create actual end use looking prototypes directly with 3D printing. So even if you do FDM, even if you make a part out of SLA such as this, you have to go for painting or some post processing to make it look more ready, more market aligned. But in PolyJet, you don't need to do that. The part that would directly come out of the printer would be as perfect as your post-process ready part. You just need to wash it, take out the supports, and it will be ready. In PolyJet, you don't even need to take out the support. So you have this semi-cured resin in place of support. It can be very easily removed with a jet of water. So just to discuss the core technology that goes behind PolyJet. So you all have seen inkjet printers, normal paper printers in your home. The same thing is used in PolyJet. So we have an inkjet print head, such as this. I will show you the photo. This is an inkjet print head. This have multiple micro ports inside it. We have a tank of material in which we can put the material we want to print. Even we can put multiple material if we want to. So this is the advantage of PolyJet. So if you want to mix and match different type of material in the same print, you can do that very easily. So you can see in this small video over here, the head is first depositing a layer of material. Then while coming back, it has this UV lamp underneath it. You can see it glowing over here, and it is curing it. Also, you can see that some part of this is like full crystal white, and some part of it is like little bit transparent and looking like wax. So this wax is basically semi-cured material which will act as support, and after the print you have to take the wax out. So as I told you guys, with PolyJet you can mostly create lifelike prototypes. So in the first picture you can see they have printed some parts in white, Vero white material, which is almost like ABS, and this black part which you see is a rubber like material which we call Agilus 30. So I have a part over here which is printed out of Agilus 30. See, it's very flexible. It is just 30 shore in hardness. You can twist it, it will move. So we use this part for a wire cover. With Agilus 30, even you can go with higher hardness materials such as 90 shore, 95 shore. In the second picture, you can see very good looking prototypes. So as I told, in PolyJet we can create market ready prototypes in a single go. So here even the texture can be controlled while printing. So you have a base material, you have materials with color, you have a rubber like elastomer material, and you can mix all those while printing and create textures which you like. In this picture you can see it has kind of a fabric like texture. This was not post processed, this was created right out of the printer. And this is the reason why PolyJet is a very expensive 3D printing technology, just because of this. PolyJet is very widely used in dental and other medical applications also. There are even specialized PolyJet printer which they use in AIIMS to create implants, to create a lot of medical prints. So here are some of the parts that we actually printed out of PolyJet for our own R&D. You can see this part particularly is not cured, so you can see this small wax-like coating. These are support, these have to be removed. I actually have a part which I have not removed the support yet, so you can see. So in this part you can see there is some coating around. If I press it, the wax will just come out like this, and if I remove it completely, then you will see this part, small pin kind of structure. You can even print elastomers such as this. This is also Agilus 30 material, just the thickness of the print is very low. You can use this kind of material to create valves, to create gaskets and other kind of thing where some sealing is required. This is a PolyJet printer which is manufactured by Stratasys. This is one of the introductory printers which is called Object 30. The other printer which you saw in the picture, this is a J750 version. So with J750 we can print all this kind of material, different textures and all. With this particular printer, the material choices are really limited. We have some Vero white material, we have some elastomers, one or two, and that's all, because this was introduced a long back. Since then the technology has really developed. So basically, if you are thinking that if you have a part and you are thinking if you want to do PolyJet or not, then the decision making parameters would be that how good quality part you need. Do you need multiple colors? Do you want to print some elastomers such as this? Remember when I was talking about SLA, I told that if you print a rubber like material from SLA, the part would come out little bit brittle. So if you are flexing it like this again and again and again, it will break. But with PolyJet it won't happen. With SLA, even if the part is exposed to environment for long time, it will slowly start degrading. But with PolyJet we don't have that problem because we use better quality of material when it comes to PolyJet. Excellent surface finish and accuracy. The accuracy is in like 50 microns. For if you are printing a mating part in, let's say, FDM or SLS, you need to give at least 0.2 clearance. But when it comes to PolyJet, even 50 microns is enough for a perfect fit. This is a SLA part, but you can see it fixes very easily with almost negligible clearance. You don't need to post process a PolyJet part, because when it comes out of the printer, you just need to get rid of the support using a water jet gun and you are ready to go. Because of all this convenience, this technology is very expensive. So just to give you a scale, the small part that I am holding in my hand is around 3,000 rupees. The same part if I did in let's say FDM would cost me hardly 200 or 300 rupees. So here is a comparison. So now let's talk about this part. So if I were to print it in FDM printer in PETG material, it would cost me around 2000 to 2500 rupees. It will be very nice functional, it won't break very easily. Accuracy won't be that good, obviously, because I have to even sand it, remove some material, so there will be some large variation up to 300 microns. And appearance is not good. For appearance, I need to post process it, I need to do a primer spray, I need to paint it, and then I can use it if I need a good appearance with that part. For rough and tough prototyping, yeah, I can go ahead with this. If I were to make it using SLS or MJF, let's assume here I am using polyamide 11 material, the cost would rise up to around 7,000 to 8,000. Functionally, it would be much better than this, because we are using nylon. It will be a little bit more flexible than this, and obviously much more higher strength than it, because the fusing between the layer will be much better than what we get in FDM, because there we have a laser sintered. Accuracy, obviously better than FDM printer, but not as good as SLA or PolyJet. Appearance, it will be better than FDM. It will have a coarse kind of appearance. So this is a part which directly came out of MJF printer without any sanding or something. You can see there are no much visible layer lines. It has kind of a powdery, matty texture. After you sandblast it and dye it in black color, this is what you get. So it is better than FDM, better than this, but not as good as this. After that, if I want to make the same part using SLA, let's assume that I am using a standard resin. It's called Acura White. It is a material made by 3D System. It would cost me around 25 to 27,000. You can see the jump from 7,000 to 27,000 in SLA. Will it be a functional part? No. If you put much pressure into a SLA part, it will break, because SLA was designed for cosmetic part more than for functional part. Accuracy, yeah, accuracy will be very good, because it is sintered using laser and it is made out of resin, so accuracy is very good. Appearance is almost very good. If you paint it, you can get it in whatever color you want. If I want to make the same thing using Polyjet, I can go for a material called Digital ABS Plus. This material is made by Stratasys. This will have properties equivalent to ABS material. This part would cost me around 35 to 37,000 when I go for a Polyjet. Will this have functional strength? Yes, it will have. If I use this Digital ABS Plus material. If I use the standard resin material which comes with Polyjets such as Zero White, then I won't have this functional property, but I use proper ABS Plus equivalent material, then I will have proper functional strength. Accuracy, obviously, because this is a Polyjet, you will have accuracy in ranges of 10 to 50 micron, 10 microns mostly. Appearance, obviously, you can have it in different colors, you can mix and match with some other elastomers, it will look really nice. So I think this is the product that we are working here over here, and this everything that you see in this screen except for the screws and the electronics is actually 3D printed. So as you saw this base plate, so this white color part over is this base plate, it is thoroughly post processed. Now you can hardly see any layer lines or anything. These links that I showed to you sometimes earlier, this withstand a lot of force, compression force. So we have opted for MJF over here, same polyamide 11 material, then dyed in black color. This part is also made out of MJF. You can see a small translucent part over here which is marked as wire throat. This is made out of this Agilus 30 material, but we have not added any black color into it, so it is translucent. Right? If we would have added black color, then I would get a part such as this. All the straps that you can see on my fingers, these are made out of normal hobby grade 3D printers using EPU filament. I think that's all. There is a small black color part over here which is not marked. This part is actually made out of rubber like material from SLA. Since I don't have a lot of bending over here, I can use it. But if I would have had a lot of bending like in this wire throat, because the wire would go like this again and again and again, I had to go for Polyjet Agilus 30 material. Okay. Before I move any further, do you guys have any question? Any question, guys? Okay, seems like no question, so I will just move forward with this. Let me share my screen again. Okay, so actually I have some question for you guys. So if I were to manufacture this particular drone frame, what type of manufacturing process or 3D printing process would be a perfect fit for this? You can unmute and answer the question, or you can even type it in the chat.
SLS?
Yeah, SLS would be a perfect fit for it. You can even go for MJF. Simply because it's a generative design and you need a lot of strength over here. Okay, how about this? What type of process would be perfect to manufacture this airtight lid for a container?
Polyjetting.
Polyjetting. Okay. Okay. Which of this following additive manufacturing process support structures are not required? Anyone?
MJF?
Yeah, MJF. Why?
Because the powder bed itself supports the model.
Yes. You don't, because the powder is layered layer upon layer, layer upon layer. So all the overhangs are actually supported by the residual powder. You don't need any other support structure. Okay, that is the correct answer. Moving on, let's talk about some applications where 3D printing is being used. So over your right side, you can see this particular component. So this is basically a rocket engine. This is completely 3D printed using metal laser sintering, direct metal laser sintering process, and this was manufactured by a Indian startup called Skyroot Aerospace, and they are trying to decentralize space travel by basically reducing the cost to make a rocket. Then apart from that, let's come up to our world. So in medical, you have dental braces and a lot of dental things that can be 3D printed with SLA or PolyJet. You can make braces or prosthetics with SLS or MJF. You can make jigs or fixtures. So if you want to, let's say, machine a part and you need to hold the workpiece at a certain angle, you need something to clamp it properly. You need to keep it stable. For that, a lot of time in industries, they will just print a jig and then they will use it. So for example, if I want to do some machining on this base plate, I have this particular jig. I will just fit it in so the surface is at 90 degrees. Apart from that, in medical, we have people printing hard walls. Even there is a high temperature material which is available in PolyJet. So if you want this particular part to be injection molded and you don't want to go for a proper tool steel mold, you can even PolyJet the mold, and for some 100 to 150 cycles you can use this particular mold to make injection molded part. You don't need to make a tool steel mold out of it. For low volume batch production, you can use it. So that's all from my side. Any question, guys? If you are working on any project and you want to, you have any questions regarding what process should I use or what material should I use, you can really ask.
Sir, we have chapter members from different branches. So we have biotech students and electrical students. They are curious to know how they can utilize this additive manufacturing technology in their branches.
Okay. Okay. Why don't you guys first ask me a question? So it will be easier for me to get to a direction where I can, ask, because this is a really broad field.
They're just getting started with some basic projects. So they're curious how they would be using this additive manufacturing in their projects.
Okay.
So we had a previous session in which we collected a few ideas. They are interested in making prosthetics and braces, basic projects to begin with.
Okay. So if you really want to go into making prosthetics and you want to make low cost prosthetics, FDM is a really great tool. We have companies such as OpenBionex, and even Havish is working on some prosthetics which are meant for the low cost segment. So FDM is a very nice tool for it. If you want to make prosthetics for a little advanced or little expensive sector, then you can go for MJF or SLS. You can dye your parts in whatever color you want. It generally comes out really nice. If you guys are from biomedical or biotechnology, so you already know that in biomedical we actually use 3D printers to create artificial organs. None of these organs are yet successfully transplanted, but the work is going on. Also 3D printing, some companies are developing silicon 3D printing. So making silicon part was little difficult, especially prototyping silicon part with proper strength and all. but there are multiple company. One of the companies called Prayastha, and they were actually part of VIT long back. They are actually developing a silicon 3D printer for making implants. So that is one part that you can explore. If you are making some project in that field, you can explore that. In biotech, a lot of organ printing is going on even on cellular level. There's a company called CellLink. You can go look at it. They have developed some the 3D printer for printing tissues. So that is a very good field for you guys to explore.
Hello, Sam, can you hear me?
Yeah,
Hello?
yeah. Tell me.
Do you know if there are any techniques that are body safe, such that you could put a resin or something inside of a person's body and then
Yeah,
harden
you
it
can.
with sonic
Yeah.
or something?
No, if you already know the digital CAD data for the structure that you are going to make, you can basically use CT scan and the images from the CT scan to develop that CAD. So then you can go with a silicon 3D printer. So there are some companies which have actually developed it abroad India, and there is one company that I know of which are developing it. So those implants are made out of silicon. So silicon is pretty safe for body and you can use it. And if you want to basically, yeah, Hank, continue.
I was wondering though if you could print it inside of the body, for example, a stent to open an artery or something, that you place something in there and then you harden it or whatever with sonics.
Okay, I am not aware of any such technology being used at this point, but yes, interesting direction to actually explore. Stents are being printed, that is already being happening from at least 2 to 3, 5 years right now. But yeah, printing inside body, that I am not aware of that anybody has yet tried.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Right?
So, could you explain the purpose of your project, sir, which you should? How it
Yes,
works?
can you repeat the question, Arun?
Could you explain the purpose of your project?
Okay, so what we are developing at Hunar is basically exoskeleton for rehabilitation of stroke patients. So it is going to be a robotic device, and the physiotherapist doesn't have to give the therapy by himself. So you saw that picture that I shared. So that is the product that we are currently developing. I'll show you. So I hope you can see my screen. So yeah, this is the basically exoskeleton that we are trying to develop.
Yes, okay, sir.
Anyone else? Any question? You can ask me anything regarding to 3D printing. I will try my best to answer it.
I've got another question, if I may.
Yeah,
Go ahead. Somebody else. I've already asked the question.
No, Han, go ahead. Ask your question.
Well, I joined late, so maybe you covered this already, but what are the volumetric limits of the technologies you've spoken about? I mean, are we talking about less than a cubic meter or what?
Okay, so when I'm talking about, let's say, FDM, so there are multiple companies such as Big Rep, or there is one Indian company as well, which make really large volume printers. So Big Rep printers are like as big as a proper study table. So even like it's like 2 meter by 2 meter you can easily print. So a lot of aerospace companies, they are actually printing their flight cases using this particular big rep printer. When we come to let's say SLA, I think 300 mm by 300 mm by 300 mm. Most there are 3D system printers which can have that volume. Same goes for MJF. It's around 300 to somewhere around 300 millimeters to around half a meter. That is the range of all the industrial machines. There are specific big ones also for any particular use case. Did that answer question, Hank?
Yes, it did. Thanks.
Yeah, if anybody else has questions, you may proceed. Otherwise, we think we are towards the end of the session. And if you have any further doubts, like you want to ask them later, you could mail us to the AMSI VIT mail ID, so we could direct it to Mr. Som and get your doubts clear. So I hope we are towards the end of the event. And Som sir, thank you so much. That was really interesting and easy to understand presentation. And on behalf of AMSI VIT, I would like to thank you for exposing us all to all the additive manufacturing technologies, and hope this would have created a spark in the minds of the people of our chapter to explore and learn more about it. The session was truly insightful, and thank you for spending time with us amidst your busy schedule. And also on behalf of all the members of AMSI, I wish your startup Pune reaches greater heights and helps a lot of people. Thank you for the presentation, sir. That was great.
Thank you, Madhavita. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks.
We also thank the members of AMSI for joining, and you're also requested to fill the attendance form before you leave the meeting. It is just for the AMSI members who have joined us.